Welcome, Dr. Tenia. The question is, in your work as a leadership development expert, what are some key strategies you have found effective in helping leaders foster resilience and well-being within their teams, especially during times of organizational changes?
Mhm. I think there are a couple of things, where I've seen leaders have the most success is leaders that are agile and that are open to change, that are good communicators, and that are authentic in their approach. Because typically during change, employees want to know they can trust you, they want to know that you're consistent, and they want to feel that you have their best interests at heart.
Hmm. So you have emphasized the importance of empathy and mentorship in leadership. How can leaders integrate these elements into their daily practices to create a more supportive and resilient work environment?
Yeah, that's fair. I almost think that, leaders today kind of have to wear multiple hats, right? We have, many generations at work, and with the new workforce coming in, they require, a lot of conversation and communication around what they do, how they do it. They're focused on their career trajectory. And it somewhat forces leaders to coach, to mentor, to make sure that they are explaining things well, to make sure that their teams are progressing through, their learning and making sure that they understand what the business is needing from them. So it's almost a force of some nature to connect with employees differently. At least what I hear from leaders, totally different than what has been in the past. And so that's one. And then empathy, I just think that's just, the world is turned upside down right now. And I think everybody just needs a little bit of grace, right? And life is happening while you're working. Life doesn't stop when you go to work. It continues. And so, you have a lot of employees that are caring for their parents. You have employees that, have, children recovering from, COVID is still, we still have remnants of COVID. And with that, it creates this space where employees feel there's understanding, there's empathy around, what's going on in their lives. And so I might not personally be experiencing it. However, I always want to get the best out of my team. And I also want to retain my team. And so that comes with having a respect and appreciation for all the talents that they bring, but also understanding that there are dynamics that come with that, um, that sometimes, employees just need a little bit of grace, as I say, to work through whatever's in front of them.
Uh, that was fantastic. But as an HR expert, what do you consider in during the interview? Like, what are some of the qualifications you see, a general qualification for a person, or some traits or behavior that you consider in addition to their expertise?
Yeah, there's quite a few things. It really depends on the role. But I look for, the ability to learn, to have agility around, you know, uh, adjusting and navigating a new organization. How willing are they to take feedback? How do they learn? And how do they work on teams? And I think that, especially, in the workplace today, it's so important to be able to hear feedback and then, to understand the constructiveness that goes along with it to develop and grow. I think sometimes where I see people get stuck is that um, they don't respond to feedback well, and so they're just stuck, right? Versus, wow, maybe I can be a little more organized, or maybe the deadline, I can revisit how I project manage my task, or whatever that might be, right? Or it could even be maybe I need to learn a new skill, right? The workforce is changing so fast, technology is changing fast, and it's forcing all of us to retool in a different way. And so I look for the agility. I look for how they communicate, how they problem solve, how do they, approach, forming and working on teams to execute on the work. So I look for all the dynamics and how willing are they to learn. So those are all important factors.
Yeah, because uh, recently I heard from Elon Musk that and the journalist asked him, "What is the biggest regret of you?" And he said, "I was always considering the expertise over morality or behavior. Like if
Yeah,
a person is moral, he will be more, he or she will perform better than an expert, because as you said, he or she can grow and learn better and perform better rather
yeah.
to only focus on the expertise.
Yeah,
So
and sometimes, expertise is good. And sometimes, as a subject matter expert, sometimes, some might fit better as an individual contributor versus a people manager, right? I think there's a place for everybody on the bus, but it just depends on how can we get the most and the best out of that particular skill set. And, there are some, subject matter experts that don't like working on teams, and that's okay. And so, how do you get the best out of that talent? Um, I do think that behavior attitude trumps a lot for me, because I can have someone that is brilliant. However, if they don't know how to communicate in a positive way, or if they don't know how to work on teams, or if they undermine, micromanage, and all that, it tends to erode a team quickly. So I do think that the attitude and behavior has a lot to do with it. But of course, you definitely want the person to have the subject matter chops coming in the door. You definitely want that. But that I think now in the workplace, there are different dynamics that go along with it, depending on the role.
exactly. So according to your expertise and experience, who is a good leader in a workplace?
Wow. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of really good leaders. But one that stands above all is Tim Bennett, who was the president at a company I worked for. And um, I really saw him model servant leadership. And I saw someone that really walked the talk. And he was great at working with all the different styles of leadership and backgrounds, personalities, and able to get the best out of this collective group. And he was always true and consistent, and that's so important. I learned a lot about his leadership style. I learned a lot from him and his leadership style. Um, where I firsthand saw someone that led with empathy. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, but he was always observing. He was thoughtful in his response. He was thoughtful in his approach. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I walked away, from that experience feeling like, wow, I'm a better leader because I learned from this person.
Mm. So, do you consider being observant while having a positive attitude toward the employees is a good leadership, or there is a specific thing that you have in your mind?
No, I think it's different every company is different and it has kind of its own pulse, right? And so I do think, having an observant style of listening is important. Um, it's important to understand what's said and not said, right? And I do think that I call it the pause. You know, e- every action does not require a reaction. And to really understand the situation and dynamics, I think first is the utmost importance. And then, you know, I think you're more equipped to have a follow-up. And it doesn't have to always be immediate. You know, it could be thoughtful. You can hit pause and think it through, ask questions. I do think, you know, in this climate of exchange, you know, people are conditioned to have such a stance around right, wrong, me, you, versus, you know, I like to say change the vocabulary, we, us, find middle ground, and let me understand where you are coming from, or let me understand what you're saying, or let me understand your position. I think that's just so important, as we are trying to either build a rapport or help problem solve, or build connections. You know, it's a different style of leaning in.
Exactly. So, um, how to like make a balance between the higher management expectation and the employees? Because, as you said, considering the employees' problems, you will face challenges to report to the higher management. And if you don't consider their challenges, their problems, their personal problems, and then it's also negligence of their problems. And then you have problem in lower employees. So how to make a balance in order to have a sustainable development that make the higher management happy at the same time being a moral person, a leader, at the same time helping the employees who are under a manager or under you.
Yeah, and you're right about that. I mean, finding that happy balance, right? And so I think the first thing is just having clarity around, you know, what is the business objective? What are the business goals, right? And so having that clarity first, and then kind of just walking the employee through, this is how you fit into the grand scheme of the picture. And always having that, whether are metrics or whatever the milestones, whatever those things might be, it's important for employees to understand how they contribute. How does it connect with the bottom line? That's one. Now, how you get the work done through the people is also important. You know, do you have the right support systems in the organization? Do you have the right benefits package for the employees, right? As we set the tone of what the business needs, understanding what's needed from the employee population to do the work, right? Because we can't run a business without people. So people matter, right? And so, yes, I think there are two things. We owe it to employees for them to have an in-depth understanding of what is our mission, what is our purpose, what are the company values, what are we hoping to achieve, and what are the milestones, and how do we measure it? And this is how you fit into the grand scheme of things. I think that's very important, right? And then how do we engage employees in that atmosphere of work, right? To ensure that we have good retention, that employees feel valued, that they feel they belong, that there's inclusion. You know, those things matter as well. So where I've seen companies have the most success is where they are able to articulate their mission, their value, and their business goals and objectives to the employee base, and then articulate to the employee base, here's how you fit into that plan, and here's how we measure it, and here's how we look at success. Because most of the time people just want to know, are we knocking it out the park? You know, are we doing a great job? And of course you want to define what a great job is for them so that they know that they are contributing good work.
Thank you. So, drawing from your extensive experience, what would you advise to HR professionals and leaders who are looking to cultivate a strong company culture that not only drive performance but also prioritize the well-being of their employees?
Mhm. Yeah, you know, the workplace, as I mentioned earlier, is different. And I think it's important to have good leaders and to invest in leadership development, because most employees do not leave a company, they leave bad managers. And so, you know, it's important to make sure that there are good leaders in place to motivate, engage, and drive performance. And you can't do that unless the leaders know how to engage and build that rapport with the employees, depending on the organization. You know, some organizations are more people-centric, and then some are not. So it really depends on the industry as well. But I think there's a common thread around how do we value people. And I would say, you know, having the right people on the right seat in the bus is important. Having transparency and communications and efforts of the business, having a good trajectory of where and how people can grow is important. And, you know, what I hear employees say they want most is just authenticity, right? And so, you know, creating a space where people feel they can show up and do their best work and contribute is so important. And for organizations to create space for that, I've seen organizations thrive that are able to do that.
Mhm. And let us know a little about yourself, your education, and your work experience.
Mhm.
And the
Um,
book you wrote is
yeah,
very important.
I'm so excited about my book. So yes, I completed my PhD, and I'm so excited about that. My research was on how servant leaders are able to lead organizations and what happens to those individuals that are cultivated in those incubators when they go on to other organizations, and are they able to move the same behaviors forward. And my first book was just on that, 8 essential steps to inspire others and build a thriving workforce, and using the servant leadership advantage. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, and I also, you know, have seen firsthand leaders that are able to really captivate and drive performance and have good business results by understanding their team dynamics, by setting clear direction, by communicating and having transparency in the way they operate and empathy, have more success than other leaders. Where I've seen, um, you know, erosion is where, you know, leaders micromanage, they create distrust, they create division, they undermine, you know, those are things that no one, I mean, that's just out the window. But um, so I focus more on my research around these different leadership styles, and how does it impact company bottom line, right? And also, what does it do for the culture? I have a follow-up book coming out in about 45 days, and it's part of a series. And the book coming out is the blueprint on feedback through constructive insights. And one of the, you know, things that I've seen in my career where managers just do not like is giving feedback. And
Mm.
right. And so, you know, I think I've kind of come up with a simple way for leaders to approach feedback that's productive for them and for staff members. And so I'm really excited because I've taken this collection of observations and experiences and also stories from a lot of my peers, of, you know, where we see feedback done masterfully well, and then also where there was just opportunities for development. And hopefully readers will see it as kind of a one-stop, oh, wow, you know, I feel I can, you know, have the confidence to do this better. Um, and so there will be a follow-up book after, well, I can't even think about it now, but it will be on mentoring. So just trying to leave some good work in the space and help organizations thrive. But in this series of 3 books, the first one on feedback, um, I really tackled, you know, at least where I hear from leaders, no one likes giving feedback, especially in this climate. And I offer some approaches that I think are a little bit easier to apply. At least I hope so for the readers.
Yeah, congratulations, yeah, and thank you for this much service that you are doing,
Thank you.
as you say, to the space. Yeah, and according to this much expertise, what is some of or one of the challenges that leaders have, or leaders like face nowadays?
I think a lot of it is just managing people. It's far more complex than it was before. I mean, just giving feedback, when I talk to my peers and just leaders in general, it's, I have all these generations at work. How do I get the best out of people? Life is happening, how do I listen and drive performance, and how do I provide feedback and in a constructive way where individuals feel that this was a learning opportunity for them. I think the biggest challenge is just managing people, and having the right talent, to move businesses forward. I think that's going to be a challenge for us for a couple of years to come.
Yeah, and what's the reason for this? Because as you said, this challenge is like a kind of growing. Maybe in the past we have less of this challenge because of maybe there is a reason behind it. Managing people is more difficult than and getting more difficult nowadays.
Yeah,
So what
it
was the
is. Yeah, and I think that it will become even more problematic, right? And so with the so many social issues that are taking place, it doesn't stop when people go to work, and so how do you create an ecosystem where everyone feels included and everyone feels they can show up and be their best? And I think organizations are struggling with that, right? Because there's company and there's community, and historically we've only been company, and now organizations are asked to be community and company, and that becomes even more complex. And in doing that, not to isolate, any one particular group. And so, I think that that will continue to be a challenge depending on the industry, depending on the size of the company, depending on the mission of the company, the value of the company, what do they value? Um, However, what I know is consistent is having good leadership. It's so important to have good leadership.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And what do you think about uh, the leaders themselves? Is leadership a genetically gifted, or it's a skill that we can develop, or a combination of both? And how we can help ourselves if we find ourselves as a leader in any organization?
Well, my personal opinion, I think, yes, I do think leadership can be developed.
Mhm.
However, where I've seen leaders have the most success are leaders that have self-awareness. Lack of self-awareness is really hard to develop leaders. Where I've seen leaders have the most success is those that are self-aware. But
Mm.
yes, but I do think leadership can be developed.
So self-awareness takes a lot of studying, understanding, reading, because we have to know about the psychology, spirituality, our mind, and a lot of stuff. Otherwise, it's difficult to
Yeah.
know what's going on inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And know what your drivers are, right? And so when you have this, I always say eclectic group of folks around you, because everybody, different backgrounds, different opinions, values, religion. I mean, it's just so many differences. And how do you get the best out of that, right? Depending on the demographics of the team, it requires that leader to be open to learning as well. It requires that leader to have some sort of self-reflection, as you were mentioning, and wisdom. I think there's a lot of value in wisdom, that's sometimes underrated, but I think it's very important to have. And then, empathy and really listen to and what's said and not said. So I think leaders are, the description has definitely expanded for leaders today. And where I've seen leaders have success is those that have those different dynamics or have evolved and developed and continue to develop. I think it's important. Leaders that, are interested in learning, I find, tend to have more success because they're more open to what they know and what they don't know. So it's okay for the teacher to show up as the student. It's okay.
And one of the challenge, and one of the thing that I'm curious about is very interesting for me is about the as you mentioned, empathy. A lot of leaders doesn't have empathy, and it creates very chaotic situation. And although nobody knows, even neither the higher management nor the lower management, but I have experienced that lack of empathy creates a lot of problems. So how a person know and develop this skill?
Yeah, I think that's a personal development.
Yeah,
Um, it really is.
right,
That's a personal journey. Um,
right,
to have empathy and understanding of something that is different or for that person or something they might not have experienced. I think it's a personal journey. Um,
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So how can people find your books, your work, and yourself? Let us know
Ah,
about
yes. And I love to hear feedback as well. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, VTHE Leadership Wise. And then my website is theleadershipwise.com.
Thank you so much, Tina,
Thank you.
for answering a lot of questions, and hope to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.